Let's make a start. Okay, well, hello, I'm Algis Lucas, and it's my pleasure to welcome one and all to the sixth in our free monthly virtual What Talk series. For anyone new to this, the acronym WHAT stands for Waterside Hypotheses or Aquatic Ape Theories or whatever you want. In a nutshell, it proposes that the many peculiar physical differences between humans and chimpanzees are most plausibly explained by a more aquatic past in our evolution. It is admittedly still a minority view, and most universities around the world still teach their students orthodox ideas that can perhaps be best labeled as the savannah theory. There are, however, several well-known people around the world who share our fascination for these ideas, and it is my great pleasure to introduce one of them to you here today. Michel Odent is the world-famous pioneer of the use of birthing tubs to help reduce stress and pain relief during childbirth. It was experiencing this peculiar phenomenon in our own home at the end of 1995 that first piqued my interest in the concept. My dear wife and midwifery guru, Leslie, gave birth to our fourth child, Rosalia, with the help of a birthing pool. That wonderful day certainly triggered me to spend the next 25 years or so following Elaine Morgan in studying these ideas. There are thousands of years of oral traditions of women giving birth to water, including the Maori in the shallow waters of the South Pacific, the indigenous Indians of Central America, and the Greeks and Egyptians in the Mediterranean. All of this was well known before the idea that humans had perhaps had a more aquatic past that had surfaced in the minds of Max Westenhofer, Alistair Hardy, or Elaine Morgan. It's notable that even Elaine's most feminist book, her bestseller, The Descent of Woman, didn't mention water births at all when it came out in 1972, although the practice was being modernized at the time by a Russian and a Frenchman. A swimming instructor turned researcher called Igor Charkovsky had already made a bit of a splash with reports of him helping women give birth in the Black Sea, apparently amongst dolphins. And 80 kilometers south of Paris, Michel Odent had started working at the maternity unit at Pithiviers, I hope I've said that right, as an obstetrician. There, he pioneered the use of a big gardening paddling pool to help with labor pains during childbirth. Of course, Elaine's second book, which was much more focused on human evolution, The Aquatic Ape, did cover the subject and told Igor's story before writing about the man it is my honor to introduce today. It sounds a bit dated that she found it noteworthy that Michel gave women a free choice of the position in which they wish to give birth. For example, standing or squatting instead of supine. And of course, Elaine noted that in his hospital, he had a pool of warm water, shallow enough for women to sit in for births. For births. They frequently opted for this, she said, finding it stress-free and relaxing. Elaine sent Michel a copy of The Aquatic Ape in 1982, and I think it's fair to say that it influenced him. Michel has written over a dozen books since then, and they seem to have had an increasingly more aquatic theme as time has gone by. In 2007, for example, he published The Birth of Homo, the Marine Chimpanzee. Despite being world-renowned as the birthing pool man, I think Michel would prefer to be known for his pioneering work promoting the initiation of breastfeeding during the first hour following birth. I hope Michel has time to tell us a little bit more about that. So, unusually in today's high-tech world, Michel is not a member of the PowerPoint brigade, and at conferences he prefers to have the lights turned on so he can see the faces of his audience. So in honor of Michel, please turn on your videos and smile so that Michel can see your faces. As always, please mute during the discussion, during the talk, and there'll be time for questions and discussions at the end. The talk is again being recorded and will be put online at whattalks.com and the YouTube channel of the same name. So without further delay, it is now my great pleasure to introduce Michel Odent.
Thank you for this comment about PowerPoint. An opportunity to say that I'm age 92 and people my age don't like PowerPoints. They want to look at the face of people, eye-to-eye contact, but they don't want to be distracted by pictures. So that's my way of talking to you today. And as Algis said, our point of departure will be to discuss the term aquatic ape theory and to wonder how marketable, if I can say, how popular can this term be. This is not a new issue. How we might say how mediatic this term is. It's not a new issue. And somebody all of us heard about, I've read this issue a long time ago. She was Ellen Morgan. About 30 years ago, at St. Raphael in California, Ellen Morgan had an interview with the editor of Mind, Spirit Journal, or something like that. And this clever man asked her, innocent, he said, why did the title of your last book is Aquatic Ape? Why, after publishing The Descent of Woman, why did you publish a book titled Aquatic Ape? It was a clever question. And Ellen immediately, without hesitating, replied, yes, I wrote this, I've chosen this title because scientists didn't like my previous book, The Descent of Woman, because it was a bestseller. So that's why I call this one Aquatic Ape. So it was a funny way to say, I assume that this term is not really very attractive, mediatic. It was a clever answer a long time ago, 30 years ago. Since that time, we can observe that in general, people in the media never mention aquatic ape, even when they published biographies of Ellen. Recently, there were the centenary of Ellen statues, and in a well-known journal like Guardian, biography of Ellen. You cannot find the term aquatic ape. People in the media never mention aquatic ape. They mention a Descent of Woman. They give details that always come back. For example, in all biography, you read that the first time Ellen went to Oxford University, people thought that she was a cleaning lady because the way she was talking. So that always appear, but aquatic ape, never. So it means that we have good reasons to wonder, is this term marketable? Can it become better known? Can it be popular? Or should we replace it by another one? Personally, I must say that when I can, I avoid this term. I'll just mention the title of one of my books. It was The Birth of Homo, the marine chimpanzee. So that's why I suggest today that we contrast these two terms How can we do it? We need a method. So I suggest that we choose a way of finding a solution to this issue by remembering what Stephen Monroe said some months ago, that was in January, how he started his presentation in this framework of lectures organized by Algis. He started by saying, don't lose time by listening to experts. Perhaps you remember that. He was suggesting experts, we never know, but experts, ulterior motives and so on and so on. And he gave a list of people with whom we should communicate when we have to find a solution to a difficult issue. He gave a list, but at first, the first kind of people he mentioned this list was children. Children, let's children talk to children. So I followed the advice of Stephen Monroe, and I spoke with my good friend Luan, age 12, and I started our conversation, our series of conversation, with a question. I said, for your birthday, I'm thinking of giving you a present, a book. Can you choose between two titles? One book will be called The Aquatic Ape, We Are Aquatic Ape, that will be. And the other book will be titled We Are Marine Chimpanzee. Within 2 seconds, I had the reply. We are chimpanzees. We are marine chimpanzees. I know about the work of Jane Goodall. Chimpanzees are fascinated. They're like our cousins. It's like, yes, of course, he forgot the other title. Interesting, because immediately understood his point of view. There are some similarities between the way of thinking of nonagenarians and children. We have something in common. We dare to say other people don't dare to say we understand each other. So I have a series of conversations. My friend Luan, and gradually I found some rational way to interpret the point of view expressed by Luan, taking into account during my career as a medical practitioner, I found some reasons to clarify the nature of human beings, and to provide some, we might say, rational reasons to suggest that perhaps we might contrast these two terms. That is to say, contrast the term aquatic with the word marine, to contrast the term ape with the term chimpanzee, and to contrast the term theory with the term concept. So let's start with the first word, aquatic. How have we reasons to prefer aquatic to marine or rivers? So I'll reply, as I said, as a medical practitioner known for practice of obstetrics, although originally I'm not an obstetrician. I was a surgeon originally, but I'm not an obstetrician. And I mentioned some mysterious questions that are related to obstetrics. A mysterious issue is the issue of Vernix caseosa. Until the 21st century, there was no interest in general in medical circles about Vernix caseosa. In textbooks, we could have found 2 or 3 lines saying human babies, when they are born at term, their skin is covered with a kind of cream, a vernix caseosa, it means like cheese. It was mentioned, and at that time, nothing else to say except that it's only human beings, only human babies are born with this cream, apparently useless, and it was commonplace to wipe it away. When I was already in the obstetrical department in Paris, 1953, they were wiping away the vernix caseosa. Nobody knew what it was, no function, no function. Nobody was curious about that. So the turning point, we might say, and many of you know that, took place during the 21st century, in 2005. And the turning point was not the result of a study published in an academic journal. It was a program on BBC4, a program presented by David Attenborough. And Attenborough, he had apparently conversation with Don Bowen, a marine biologist from Nova Scotia, Canada, and he said in this program, a title exactly something to do with evolution, the scars of evolution. That was the title. In this program about the scars of evolution, he mentioned that according to Don Bowen, an expert in marine mammals, particularly seals, he had learned that baby seals are also born with their skin covered with vernix caseosa. So it was the first time on a popular BBC radio program, not a medical scientific journal, that we heard that vernix caseosa is not only human, it's also this kind of sea mammals. It was a big turning point. We must say there had been previously, it's important to mention that before that, there have been missed opportunities to wonder if there were not other mammals than human beings who are also born with their skin covered with vernix caseosa. There have been in the country of where Aldis is living, 1979 and 1981, there have been studies measuring, evaluating the amount of squalene in the amniotic fluid as a way to detect fetuses that might be post-term. I must recall, it's useless for most of you, that squalenes are fatty substances abundant among marine living creatures. In fact, squalene comes from squalor, which means shark in Latin. So it's typically marine. So, but it was known at that time, it was understood that at the end of pregnancy, the amount of squalene is going up, going up. But at that time, nobody was curious enough to wonder, and what about sea mammals? Nobody thought of that, although we knew about squalene. So it was a missed opportunity. There was another missed opportunity in 2000. A team of dermatologists from the US who wanted to develop a protective cream in the case of premature babies. They wanted to protect the protective cream. And they looked at vernix caseosa. They tried to imitate vernix caseosa, and they gave great importance to corneocytes. The fact that in vernix caseosa, there are cells like sponges that are protective in case of immersion and hypertonic water, for example. So they were interested in that, but they never thought of considering what about sea mammals. They didn't think of that. So that's why we have to wait until 2005, this BBC radio program, which was not listened by many scientific people, but it was not read by many scientific people, because in 2008, there was a study of vernix caseosa, and in this study, they were interested in branch chain fatty acid. Chain branch fatty acid. That was a special fatty acid, saturated, special because there was a CH3 let's say component attached to one of the carbon of the artone carbon of the fatty acid. So that branch chain fatty acid, they noticed that, they mentioned that, but obviously, although at that time they probably knew a lot about this branch chain fatty acid, however, they didn't know, obviously, about what Don Bowen had found about the vernix caseosa of seals. It was not mentioned. So it was not something which appeared, but they focused on branch chain fatty acid at that time. And it was still, to a certain extent, a missed opportunity. They have not heard about seals before. So finally, there was the last turning point in 2018. A team from California studied the particular case of sea lions. Sea lions are roughly the same family, a little bit the same family of seals. And they found that sea lions are also born with their skin covered by vernix caseosa. They look at the details of vernix caseosa, and what was important is that they understood that in vernix caseosa, there are branch chain fatty acid, and particles of vernix caseosa are reaching the amniotic fluid at the end of the pregnancy, and fetuses are swallowing this branch chain fatty acid. And it happens, they understood that the gut flora in this species, and they compare with human beings, they thought of comparing with human beings, that's interesting. The gut flora is to a great extent established in such a way that it contains a lot of branch chain fatty acids. Then similarities have been mentioned with human beings. So suddenly we realize that to a certain extent, it's something we have to study more in depth now. To a certain extent, the gut flora of human beings is established to a certain extent like the gut flora of sea lions, sea mammals, and so on and so on. So this is a way to introduce this issue as a medical practitioner interested in obstetrics and interested in what has been for such a long time mysterious in obstetrics, the issue of Wernicke, which is a way to say, but we have a non-suspected similarity with sea mammals. The word marine comes first, you know, it's not aquatic, it's marine. It's an example. There are other reasons to contrast marine with aquatic when human beings are concerned, is the issue of the need in iodine. Most human beings cannot consume a sufficient amount of iodine. It's for most human beings. For those who have no access to the seafood chain, there is not enough or just. And in particular, when a mother is pregnant or breastfeeding, her needs in iodine are multiplied by 1.5. And it's such, we might say it's the most common nutritional deficiency today among humans, except those who can consume on a regular basis seafood. At such a point that in many governments have established rules obliging to introduce iodine in the table salt. In table salt, it's obligatory in many countries because it's the most common nutritional deficiency in the world. It's all just, particularly when the woman is expecting a baby. We know why it's serious, because everybody knows that we are characterized by a huge brain, and the development and function of the brain depends to a great extent on thyroid hormones. And you know, it's well known that there is a need in iodine to produce thyroid hormone. So it's particularly serious in the case of pregnant women. This is well known. For example, American Association of Thyroid, AAT, suggests that all pregnant women would have on a regular basis 150 milligrams of iodine as a supplement. There was a British study demonstrating that when pregnant women have absorbed a supplement of iodine, the average IQ of the children are multiplied by 1.22. So when we consider that the most common nutritional deficiency among modern humans is lack, for many people, lack of iodine at such a point that government need regulations. That's serious. Once more, we are obliged to prefer the term marine to the term aquatic when we consider human beings. So we might go on like that a long time, contrasting reasons to prefer marine to aquatic. It's interesting when we try to know more the particularities of a species, particular species of mammals and particular species of ape and particular human beings. It's interesting to study in depth the enzymatic system. The enzymatic system is to analyze the characteristic of an enzymatic system is a good way to know about the particularities of a species. And among human beings, our enzymatic system is special and offers reasons to raise questions. Everybody knows, even sometimes we forget it, but everybody knows that we are characterized by an enormous brain, or encephalic, or quotient of encephalization is 7.5. The other apes, it's something much 3 times lower. So everybody knows we are special. We among all mammals, including primates, because we have an enormous brain. But while we have such an enormous brain, well, we know about the brain-specific nutrients. We know that the brain is mostly a fatty organ. We know that the brain has specific needs, in particular fatty acids, and particularly for 40% needs in DHA, to be simple, docosahexaenoic acid, if you want to have time to listen to what I'm saying, which is a long-chain omega-3 fatty acid, as long as possible, 22 carbon, 6 double bond. So that's an essential nutrient for the brain. And it means among human beings, it's so important to provide to the developing brain in particular sufficient amount of DHA. So that's well known. But what is not always considered as serious is that our enzymatic system is not very effective at making the synthesis of DHA, of the long-chain omega-3, with 22 carbon and 6 double bond. That enzymatic system is not very effective. To synthesize DHA, if you don't consume seafood, because DHA is preformed and abundant in the seafood chain only. That's the point. It's abundant and preformed in the seafood chain only. If human beings don't have access to seafood, they must transform the parent molecule of the omega-3 family, alpha-linolenic acid, that is to say, a molecule with only 18 carbons and 3 double bonds. That is to say that there is something mysterious about human beings, that we have special needs in the long chain omega-3 fatty acid with 22 carbon and 6 double bond, but our enzymatic system is not very effective. There are a need for enzymes called desaturase, elongase. We have desaturase elongase, but rats, for example, have a richer enzymatic system than us for that, which is mysterious. It's mysterious. So it's sure that we have at our disposal some of these groups of enzymes, but in fact, often they are not very effective, because to be effective, they need catalysts, mostly minerals that are catalysts that are found in the land food chain, particularly in green vegetable and so on. They are found, but not a huge amount of this. And this synthesis, which needs catalysts, is easily, the metabolic pathway easily disturbed. It's fragile. It can be disturbed by emotional state. For example, cortisol. What happens if a pregnant woman is not happy, is depressed, has cortisol? It's minimizing the effect of these enzymes. There are other blocking agents, like pure sugar, alcohol, man-made food. So this is a mysterious aspect of human beings, that we have a huge brain, that main characteristic of human beings. We always to start from that. Huge brains, huge needs in long chain omega-3 fatty acids, but the enzyme system was not very effective. That means probably, ideally, we need to consume the kind of fatty acids that are found in the food chain only. It's another way to say that the good reason to develop the concept of marine, the word marine, because these are much more common points with sea mammals than with aquatic mammals. There are aquatic mammals that are not living in marine environment at all, rhinoceros, elephant, otter, sea voles, and so on, but we don't have many common points with them. When we consider that we are special with compared with the other mammals, the common points are much more with sea mammals. So this is a fast way to suggest that we have reasons to replace, to a certain extent. I don't want to say we should do it, but we have reason to replace the term aquatic by the term mammals. I don't want to say more. It's a big issue, but this is the first component of the concept of the term, the aquatic ape hypothesis. We have reason to replace aquatic by marine. So the second term is the term ape. Do we have reasons to replace the term ape by the term chimpanzee? Once more, I have the point of view of my friend Luan, age 12. I tell you, I said, do you prefer to say that we are apes or that we are chimpanzee? Oh, chimpanzee, yes, we are chimpanzees. Jane Goodall, oh, we are chimpanzee, yes, we look like chimpanzees, they are friends, we are chimpanzees. And ape, I don't know exactly what it means. There is also a reason to prefer the term chimpanzee. That is difficult to translate ape in other languages. We have to consider that at the present time, age of globalization, going from one language to another one, we have to realize that ape is a term well known in the English language, incredibly difficult, very difficult to translate. When I speak French, my mother tongue, I cannot translate ape. There is a word for primate. There was a word for monkeys. There is a word for chimpanzee, for gorilla, but there is no word. So this is the first reason to prefer, perhaps, chimpanzees. Another reason is that according to many, let's use the word expert, even it's pejorative, among many experts, there are reasons to think there has been a split, chimpanzee-homo split, a certain time. We are cousins, but we separated from our cousins. At a certain time, there was a split. So this is accepted by many people today. I don't want to discuss to this and that, but so I explained that to my friend Luan. He's 12, that probably at a certain time, we separated from the other members of the chimpanzee family. So I started to explain that according to some experts, it was 4 million years ago, or 5 or 6, or he was not interested in that at all. For him, 4 million, 6 million, no, he wanted to know what he wanted to know. Where this happened, where was it? Where was the split? Where the split? So that Homo separated from the other members of a chimpanzee family. That's what he wanted to know. So I had to explain what I could say. I could not say a lot. I said probably it happened in places where there are huge populations of chimpanzees, of course. It happened where there were chimpanzees. I said, so where were they living, chimpanzees? Oh, I said they were living mostly in West Africa, around the equator, places are now Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and so on. That's a place where where chimpanzees were living. I explained that. I said, so perhaps we have fossils of chimpanzees in places where there are also fossils of human beings. And that's a very important question. I have to say, no, there is no fossil of chimpanzee and no fossil of human beings among fossils of chimpanzee. No, because you can only find fossils if the climatic and geological conditions are perfect. And in the place where probably the split happened, the separation happened, there were huge rains, heavy rains, geological conditions, climatic conditions, so that it's impossible to find fossils. So that was a challenge, how to understand that. We don't know. So he said, but so we don't know. And what happened? What happened? We can say probably it was a place where there were many chimpanzees. Of course, we cannot find fossils. And I explained that perhaps at that time, Homo separated from other members of the family. They had acquire the capacity to develop a huge brain, probably it's possible that they started to live in coastal areas along the sea. It's possible. Ah, yes, that's interesting. So perhaps we can find fossils of human beings along the coast, in coastal areas. I said, no, we cannot. Because there have been incredible, terrible fluctuation of sea levels. Sea levels today are completely different from when they were some hundreds of thousands of years ago, millions of years ago. Many places where perhaps our ancestors were living, probably they were living because to develop with their huge brain, they needed food from the sea. But now these places are covered by the sea, most of them. We cannot find fossils. So here we were. That we have to confess that we have still many things to learn, many things we don't know. The conversation with this boy, age 12, it was a good way to focus on what we don't know. And apparently to focus on how can we know more? And that was the question by this little boy. Can we know more? We never know more. That's mysterious. Our origins, we know anything about origins. I said, perhaps there are emerging disciplines that can help us in the future. We cannot say more, but meanwhile, let's dream of perhaps what we can learn in your future. For example, of discipline like virology. When we know about viruses, there are many mysterious questions about how our genes have been colonized by viruses. It's question, for example, we wonder why a virus called MERV2, MERV2, has colonized the genes of chimpanzee, but not the genes for human beings. That perhaps bring some ways to know a little more, differences in how our genes have been colonized by viruses. If the genes of chimpanzees are colonized by these viruses, but not the genes of human beings, it means that the contamination took place after the split. That perhaps was something we can conclude. And perhaps after that, human beings, Homo, have been more or less in isolated places, and they've never been colonized and never been contaminated by this virus. So just to say, I cannot say more, I don't know, we don't know, nobody knows. But it's possible that in the future, we can understand in a new way, completely new way, the common points between human beings and sea mammals, the differences between human beings and other chimpanzees. We still have a lot to learn. There is still one word we have to consider, that we started from aquatic ape theory. I asked my friend, what do you think of theories? He was not very interested in the topic, but he said theories, not ideas. theories that come and go, they disappear, they come back. For him, what is theoretical is not very serious, it's not very serious. So apparently, he would prefer finally the phrase marine chimpanzee concept. One reason why I prefer concept that he doesn't know exactly what it means. That's so curious, curious. But from his point of view, concept is much more related to a way of thinking, rather than ideas, imagination. So finally, after considering what I have learned as a practitioner in obstetrics, I have learned from conversation with a 12-year-old boy, I can say that finally we might have reasons to test, to contrast, to compare these two phrases. Do we have reasons? I don't know that we should do it. Do we have reasons to replace the phrase aquatic theory by the phrase marine chimpanzee concept? So I'll finish with a question. Today, whatever the topic, we are always in an unprecedented situation, whatever the topic. What can we do in an unprecedented situation? What is urgent is to phrase appropriate questions. We must not rush to formulate theories. Think of, anticipate ideas. We have to be careful, What we have to learn to do at the time when we are, for any topic in an unprecedented situation, we have to learn to phrase questions. That gives me an opportunity to finish, to show you the cover of a book I've published not so long time ago. You don't need to read this book. Just look at the cover. What do you see? What do you see? Question mark. We are in the edge of question mark. Or what have we done today? Now, we have been phrasing questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. That was lovely. It's so refreshing to hear or see someone's face rather than a series of PowerPoint slides. And thank you for reminding us the importance to be able to explain these concepts to a child. If we can't even explain it to an intelligent child, we are struggling indeed.
We must thank Stephen Monroe.
Stefan,
give me this idea.
Well, he's not a child.
Oh, if you remember, yes. I found that very, very clever as a way to start, She said, to say, don't lose, he said exactly, I took notes. Don't lose time with experts. Of course, it's provocative, but something to remember.
Absolutely. Okay, now I want to open up for questions. Now, I'm very grateful to Leslie, my wife, and that we have a majority of midwifery people, I imagine, here, because there's lots of names I've not met before. So I want to encourage one of the midwifery students or people who are working in the field of midwifery to ask a question. And I also noticed that we're very honored to have Michael Crawford as well. So I'd like to invite Michael to ask a question. While you're thinking, I've got a question of my own.
For me, Michael Crawford is much more a teacher rather than somebody.
No.
But ask me question is so much about fatty acids.
I've got a question. I mean, I noticed you didn't mention about your groundbreaking work to get to encourage women to breastfeed within the first hour. And it seems to me that it's quite relevant to the stuff you were talking about with vernix caseosa, because the studies that you cited were indicating that was really important. I wonder if you might say a word more about how did you come across that idea that the breastfeeding should happen early within the first hour?
It's not an idea. It's not an idea. I just observed that when by chance, which is exceptionally rare, a woman can give birth by herself, no drug, nothing, not disturbed, not distracted, people don't look at her, don't talk, and so on and so on. I observed that during the hour following birth, the newborn baby can express what is called now a primitive archaic reflex, a rooting reflex. I can imitate. You can see what it is. It's not. If your mother is not distracted, if baby is not distracted, during the hour from birth, it's what baby is doing. And if the mother is still on the planet, if she gave birth, it means that she has reduced her neocortical control. That's a prerequisite to give birth. The birth among humans is the birth of chimpanzees with a huge brain, neocortex, which in general is controlling. So it means that if the woman is still on the planet and reduce her neocortex control, people don't talk, don't observe, and so on. When baby is doing that, this mother knows what to do. She knows, and baby is finding the breast. The hour following birth is an interaction between two pure mammals. That to say, two mammals without any neocortical control. Baby, because too young to have a powerful neocortex, and mother, because she had to reduce her neocortical activity to give birth. So we have to consider that constantly when we study human nature, we have to refer to this, the particularity human beings, a huge brain and powerful neocortex. Whatever the topic we have to work, when we want to understand evolution of human beings, big brain, always to start from that.
Very good.
I want to say to your midwife, to explain one thing, explain that my ears, as I told you, are 92-year-olds. And although I have hearing aids, you have to speak slowly, carefully. Perhaps if I understand, somebody else can repeat. I can perceive more easily some band of frequencies than others. I can easily listen to you like this. Your band of frequency is perfect. So it's just.
I might repeat the question. So have we got a question from one of our midwifery attendees who would like to ask a question or make a point?
I'll be pleased to talk with midwives, yes.
Leslie, go on, Leslie.
It's an honor to have you here, Michel. Thank you very much for
Leslie,
that
yes.
talk. It's been really, really interesting. I just want to talk a little bit more about Vernix caseosa and the idea that it sets up the colonization of the gut, because my understanding is that it's
with the branch chain fatty acid, yes.
Yeah, the vaginal organisms that start the colonization of the gut. So what part does Vernix caseosa take in that colonization as well?
Yeah, yes, it's something to study. Until now, people have not been talking a lot about branch chain fatty acid, special fatty acid, CH3 methyl radical attached directly to, even probably the topic of the future. For example, it seems that branch chain fatty acid can have an anti-tumoral effect. Already something about breast cancer, about that. So it's topic of the future, topic of this special fatty acids are saturated, but special formula, the CH3 attached to a carbon. So at the present time, it's becoming an important topic when we consider the Vernix caseosa and the fact that baby in the womb is swallowing the Vernix caseosa, developing its gut flora. So that was published, the most interesting article was published in 2018, which is quite recent. Yeah.
I think Francesca shared the link to that paper. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you.
Or if you want to send me a message and I I told you I don't talk with PowerPoints. I don't show you the references, but I have them.
I'll put a link on the website afterwards. Michael, did you want to say something, or somebody else want to have a question? Francesca, have you got your hand up?
Michael,
Yes.
curious.
I just wanted to say, Michel, merci beaucoup. It was a very interesting talk. 28 years ago, I gave birth to my first child in a water pool in my mother's kitchen in Leamington Spa. And you were a big influence for that as well, as was Elaine and the aquatic theory in general. I believed that whatever is closest to our nature is probably easiest and best for us. It was a fantastic experience. You know, I wanted to do it again for my second child. Unfortunately, he came so fast, I didn't have time to get in the pool.
She's better.
But yes, but we got in the pool immediately afterwards. Both my children went straight to the breast, and I think that helped to continue the process with the placenta and so on, and also bonding. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and wouldn't hesitate to recommend it for anybody with a normal pregnancy. That's all.
No, it's a very important issue. We must realize that we have learned that a baby can find the breast during the hour following birth, that human being seems to be programmed to find the breast soon after being born, but we have learned that only in the 1970s. I think I'm the first one who wrote about that in the 1970s, and this has been ignored for 10,000 of years, since the Neolithic Revolution, since the domination of nature by our ancestors. One aspect of domination of nature, apart agriculture, animal husbandry, it was the socialization of childbirth. It was an important aspect of the domination of nature. Birth was socialized, rituals, beliefs, no access to the breast. The early colostrum was considered as useless or bad, and so on. So we have to realize what happened very, very recently. That's why I give dates in talking about Vernix Caserosa. All what we have learned so recently. So thank you for this anecdote, particular.
It's incredible how recently it is, isn't it?
Yes, that's incredible. For people my age, it's incredible. And for the age of Michael Crawford, because we are the same age.
Heloise, I hope I'm saying it right. Heloise, you got your hand up. Do you want to say a question or say a comment?
Yes, Michel, can you hear me?
Oh, I can see you, I can hear you.
You can
yes.
hear me. So, thank you.
I assume you are in Rio de Janeiro. Am I right?
Yes, right. So, thank you for presenting the importance to hear from Luan. That was a huge lesson today.
Yeah.
To hear from Luan, the good point. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for this presentation, and to be always so with a good inspiration and wishing and finding ways so we can have solutions for the world. Just that. Thank you. It's just a comment.
Thank you. Thank you. I must explain that Heloisa is a well-known midwife, home birth midwife in Rio de Janeiro.
Thank you very much. Obrigado. So who else would like to have a say? I'm opening the floor to anybody now, but Michael, do you want to say something? Michael, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I'll be pleased to see Michael. Yes, there's so much to teach to us, Michael, expert in
turn your microphone off mute. We can't hear you. At the bottom of your screen, you should have a little microphone button. If you click on that, that's it. Yeah, go on.
Yes. Well, no, I didn't want.
Michael.
hello, Michel, and how wonderful to see and hear you again after many years since we last met. It's just so glad to hear you keeping the flag of your initiative open and prosecuting it. It is so important, this kind of thing that you're talking about with the relationship between the mother and child at birth. And the tragedy is today, and I don't know what we can do about it, is that the pressure certainly in the UK and in many other countries has been on women to formula feed rather than to breastfeed. And at the moment in our hospital, we would be lucky if we had 30% of our women breastfeeding after 3 or 4 weeks. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. So what you were talking about, and the first initial start of the interesting thing is that this is the start of the biome and all this kind of stuff, is that we have evidence that the nutrition of the mother in relation to the colonization with good bacteria. I'm not a bacteriologist, so don't ask me what they are, but what the bacteriologists call good bacteria. The colonization of the small intestine of the biome, the conditions of the mother in terms of their fatty acids is the same conditions that are responsible for neurodevelopment. And this is interesting because the gut is controlled by what is called the small brain. And so the conditions of the gut are very similar to the conditions of a healthy gut are similar to the conditions of a healthy brain. And I think the colonization of the gut is something that needs a lot more attention in the future.
Topic of the future, yes.
Yeah. And you say there's another thing about that, as you well know, that in terms of gut development, and that must be relevant to the conditions of the gut and hence the type of bacteria that are likely to develop. The villi are finger-like things. They're finger-like things. And unfortunately, with malabsorption syndrome, what you see is that you get not fingers, but leaf-like things. Now, what we're talking about in terms of structure, you've got membranes, and you need these essential type fatty acids for good membranes. There's ones that are important for the brain, the same ones important to build the villi. So we have this commonality between the gut and the brain, which I think needs to be explored more.
Oh, yeah.
It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. So pleased to hear your voice, Michael. I must say that I always have at hand, in case, the driving force close to me.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you.
Yes. It was published, I think, in 1990, something like that.
95, yeah. Well, we've got a new edition coming out this year.
Yeah.
But only it's not called The Driving Force, it's called The Origin of the Brain.
Yes, yes. I have at hand driving force.
That's good.
So what I suggest.
Oh, there is one other anecdotal story that I can tell you, which is very interesting. I happen to know people who are interested in your story about water births and everything like that. And the idea that the child should be able to swim at birth.
Mm.
And there was an occasion when I know that the mother would put her newborn babies quite soon after birth into water and swim with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an occasion when her last child born sank like a stone. It was later discovered that that child had cerebral palsy, which is quite interesting when you stop and think about the implications that might have for prehistory.
That's interesting, isn't it? That's what
evidence, in other words.
We must thank Michael for.
You can't see a child with cerebral palsy's brain and know that it has cerebral palsy at birth. You only know that when it starts to be challenged with regard to motor functions and things like that. The mother perhaps says to the pediatrician, you know, you should be walking by now, but and the pediatrician says, yes, should be walking. So they do a scan and then they find out the child's got cerebral palsy. But that's perhaps 18 months, 2 months, 2 years after birth. Whereas what this interesting anecdote showed was that the signs of cerebral palsy, and this is obviously correct, were there right at the beginning of birth, but we can't see them. We can't see them. Perhaps if we did MRI scans at birth, we'd see it, but it obviously affected the child in a way that it was unable to swim the way that a normal child was.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's such a privilege to be listening to a conversation with Michel and Michael Crawford. That's really fantastic to hear. I'm just a bit conscious of the time, and we've been going for an hour and a quarter. Does anyone else like
to hear the midwives? I think I'm more interested. I'm very interested in hearing the midwives' reaction, because I mean they have a great influence on what is going on in this world in that kind of direction.
Has anyone else got a point they want to make?
Me. Can I just ask one more? So again, thinking about gut colonization and the trend now for more cesarean sections, and the fact that we're not getting the same gut colonization at birth, and whether either Michel or Michael can see any long-term impact of this on our long-term impact for the nation as a whole, on the fact that we're not getting this good gut colonization at birth through vaginal birth, and more babies are being born by cesarean section. In Australia, almost 40%.
Wow.
Yes, the issue of the physiological birth preparation. We don't realize that the days before the birth start, there are huge modification in the way the maternal and fetal physical functions work. And of course, there is the issue, the fact that the fetus swallows the amniotic fluid, but of course, it's commonplace now to shorten this phase, not only with pre-labor C-section, but also labor induction. In England, when you add labor induction plus pre-labor C-section, you reach 53% to that. Alors, not only, but it's much more than that. I don't want to give details, but how important is the phase of physiological preparation to childbirth? For example, with MRI, we know that the days before the birth, some special zones of the gray matter shrinks, reducing their volume. There are zones of the gray matter involved in socialization, as if the need to desocialize starts before. The days before birth, it has been demonstrated by studies in Finland and in Tokyo, in Japan. There is an increasing concentration in melatonin in maternal blood. And today, we know that melatonin is an important birth hormone that works with oxytocin and GABA, the neuromediator GABA, which is an important way to reduce neocortical activity. You know. So there is an incredibly important phase of pre-labor physiological birth preparation, we ignore this phase completely. And when practitioners induce labor or do pre-labor cesarean, they don't realize that they eliminate or shorten an important phase of the life of human beings. And one reason why we don't pay attention is to a great extent because we are highly specialized. Specialization makes us blind. There are people interested in pregnancy. There are people who are interested in parturition. What do we need? We need people who study the intermediate phase, the last day of birth. So we are blind because we are highly specialized. We have a lot of information, more and more information. We are bombarded by information, but we don't establish links between topics, links between phases. So that's why it's a huge topic. You know, I tried to summarize briefly because I wrote recently about that. So it's a huge topic, but we have to, at the present time, because some interventions are so common, pre-labor C-section, induction of labor, we must focus today on this phase of birth preparation, physiological birth preparation. So it's interesting that it's a teacher in midwifery who is introducing this topic. It's significant because I know that Leslie is a midwifery teacher.
Thank you very much. Has anyone got one more point that they want to make urgently? Otherwise, I think I'm going to wrap it up because I am concerned it's been now an hour and 20 minutes. Okay, well, look, I just want to say thank you so much, Michel. That was lovely, lovely. And I think you made a very good case that marine chimpanzee concept is better than aquatic ape theory.
I don't say that. I say we might at least study this point, compare.
I think you made a very good case for it anyway. So thank you very much. And I mean, I don't know if we could all applaud, but thank you very much. That's very good. It was really, really enjoyed it. Thank you. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you very much, everybody. And really, thanks everyone for coming, and particularly the newcomers, the people that have not been here before. Thank you. And you're very welcome to come along every month. And please go to the website, whattalks.com, and you can watch any of the other talks that have been given before. And it'll be lovely to see you again in the future. Michael's going to be giving a talk in a few months. So thank you, Michael, for agreeing to that. And
we hope.
I think we've got Chris Knight next up next month. So again, thank you very much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure for me, and I hope everyone's found it interesting and enjoyable.
Okay. Thank you, Michel. And thank you, Albert.